Hi, I'm Joe Feeks, editor of Poultry Health Today, and with me is Greg Mathis. He is a poultry scientist and researcher for Southern Poultry Research near Athens, Georgia. Always a pleasure to see you, Greg.
Thank you.
Last year when we talked, Greg, I asked you about the antibiotic-free trend, and you said, Joe, in some ways it's been a blessing in disguise, a real good thing, because people are now getting away from the ionophores and they're giving them a much-needed rest, which they were doing anyway with rotation programs, but you seem to convey that they really needed some downtime.
Well, I think from the ASTs that we were seeing that obviously the ionophores needed a rest, and they were being used very, very heavily. They've been off maybe a year or two of not being used quite as heavily, but I'm not sure that the ASTs are picking up that much of a difference. But I think we need to give it a little more time.
Conversely, as a lot of poultry operations have gone antibiotic-free, they use the vaccine as often as they can, but they also use the non-ionophore anticoccidials or the synthetics. Do they need more of a rest now that they're getting used more?
They do. But I think that we really are doing that. We're doing the vaccines during the summer and the spring and the fall, and then going back into some drug type program, and then going back to the vaccines. So most are not continuously using the chemicals. So they are spreading them out and resting them as we've been doing for many, many years. And I think so far, I think we're holding up without any problems.
Now, it's not a new medication per se, but Zolilean, or a product called Zoamix, was off the market for about 9 or 10 years. Previous manufacturer was to stop making it. It was brought back to the market about 2 years ago, and I've heard people describe that as a product that acts like an ionophore, but not quite like an ionophore. What's been your experience?
Well, I think that is probably one of the most interesting of the new product or reintroduced products in a number of ways, in that a company came to me and they were using nicarbazine, which is a very strong drug, and they were having pulled it out and immunity was not fully developed because it was so strong, and they were going to go to some other drug, and before in a long period of time. Well, there are products such as Amprolium, but it only has a limited spectrum of activity against Tenella, while Zolilean, on the other hand, is a very good alternative because it has a broad spectrum, a full spectrum of activity. Its mode of action is to allow, like an ionophore, like you're saying, immunity develop, direct control and immunity development. So it's almost an ideal to put it in there following a really strong drug, tapering it down and going onto a withdrawal program. So works really good.
I know a lot of operations, both conventional and the antibiotic-free ones, they may start with a vaccine, but then they find that the vaccine needs a little help. Talk to me about what they call the Shuttle Programs.
And it is basically, yes, what you're using a vaccine because of application issues or production issues, or management or whatever. You don't get a good coverage, and you get kind of a rolling effect. And what you really want to do is have something to come in there and sort of modulate that toxicity at its peak. And so in the antibiotic-free world, there really aren't many options. And one of the options is, again, either maybe Amprol, which again doesn't have a full spectrum of activity, or Zolilean. And you really need something either like that. You need something that allows immunity development as well. So again, it's sort of an ideal relaunch of a product, niche that I think they're filling that we didn't have before.
You brought that up about the medications possibly, killing the vaccine. I remember when the vaccines first started gaining traction, maybe 10 years ago or so, and everybody said, well, it's fine if you use the vaccine, but make sure the guy who's driving the feed truck knows that, because if he delivers the wrong feed, it's going to kill the vaccine. Now, we're actually making it part of the plan to use the vaccine and follow with the medication. So you're saying that you have to be selective with the medication you use, and I would imagine also the time at which you use it.
Timing is very important, and if you gave it too early, so like a farm had Clostridium issues, and they knew that the cocci was cycling too much, you might use it earlier But if you use it too early, of course, no matter what drug you're using, it's going to kill off too much of it. You're not going to get cycling. So then you have to decide, do we have more of a Clostridium issue, or we have worrying about immunity? Or do you use it too late, like at 22, 28 days, and let a lot of immunity, but then you've got the possibility of early Clostridium. So there is a fine line. And I think most people believe that, from 16 to 18, 20 days, somewhere in there, you need to start it. Then you can decide how long you want to keep it on there. But again, if it's even with an antibiotic-free, non-antibiotic-free world, the ionophores work really good for that because it gets an antibiotic effect as well as modulating the coccidia. So there's still good things in the world of coccidia control and Clostridium control.
Now, with the vaccines, with more and more operations turning to them for at least a portion of their program, are we learning more about them?
Yes, I think we've looked at application, gel spray versus water spray. Is one working better than the other? Are we, some other thoughts are that they're spraying and doing a field boost now.
A field boost?
A field boost.
With like a spray or?
Yeah, they're so spraying it back on the feed or spraying out on the litter actually. And just to cover up those missed birds, because that's obviously the missed birds that are the ones that are really the trouble, that you have immune naive birds that are 2 or 3 weeks old come in contact with a lot of cocci. And so if you can get better coverage by doing it twice, but yeah, I think that's working pretty well. And I think they've increased the dose, we've increased the lighting. So yeah, they've learned a lot about how to apply a vaccine, and it's doing better.
What does lighting have to do with coccidiosis management?
Well, lighting as far as coccidia application is, because it's a preening of either the gel or the water, and the faster they can preen, particularly with the water, because it'll evaporate really fast. And so if they go at it really fast, they're active, and it works better for picking up a greater percentage of the coccidia.
Okay, so we've covered the medications, we've covered the vaccines. Let's talk about some of the alternative products. I know a lot of people come to you and say, hey, Greg, would you check this out? What are you finding?
We probably have 24 right now battery studies lined up to look at alternative products for Clostridium and necrotic enteritis control. So they have a lot of them, but really the ones that we're concentrating on are the direct-fed microbials, which don't have an anticoccidial effect, obviously. We're looking at a lot of essential oils, which have a little bacterial and coccidial activity. And we're looking at a lot of the saponins, the triterpenoids, and the yucca extract. So there are things that have a little combination of both. So it's a good thing. And I think we're taking that, and it's really interesting to see in the field. It appears to be working, that's the problem with research, is we've always wondered, can I prove it, but will it really be applicable? And I think we're now showing that yes, we can. We do have some alternatives and improvement, but they're not the same as an antibiotic.
Right. Well, and do you have to evaluate them differently? I mean, was that part of the problem in the sense that, you're so used to evaluating a medication or a vaccine? When you talk about one of these alternative products, do you have to set up the trials differently, the methodology, and just the way the data are interpreted?
Well, yes. The studies for, originally for anticoccidial drugs, we'd take a 2-week-old bird, just put them on feed for a couple of days, and we could challenge them. While nowadays, such as with essential oils, and a lot of it is manipulating the gut health, gut strength. It's really not working against the coccidia, so you have to start them on medication, or not medication, on treatments at day of age instead of waiting. And so yes, we had to manipulate that. We have to tone back some of the challenges to look at more of a subacute, subclinical challenges to control, because again, they're not as good as an antibiotic. And we don't have anything that's as good as an antibiotic. We don't have anything as good as an FDA approved drug out there, but at least they're helping.
Now, I've heard it said that where there's coccidiosis, there's necrotic enteritis, or at least there's Clostridium, and then you get the necrotic enteritis. Yet, People over in Europe have said, well, we don't have this necrotic enteritis problem, which surprises me because, they use coarser grains, they feed a lot of wheat and so forth. Is there something we can learn from Europe about managing necrotic enteritis, or are they just looking at it differently?
I think they're looking at it differently. Actually, I think that they call it dysbacteriosis, and they actually have issues a little bit different than us because we have built up litter, we have cocci that cycles better, and we get it out of the way earlier. In Europe, they clean out their houses and they delay it, and so they have sort of, a rolling Clostridium or Enteritis. It may not be as much of a killer, but it really is a performance killer because it just kind of comes in later than it does in the United States. So I don't believe we can learn anything from what they're doing. I like what we're doing here in the United States with the built-up litter and some of the programs that we're doing.
And it's interesting with the built-up litter. I mean, to what extent does that contribute to the health of the birds? Because I know a lot of people will say, well, the United States is unique in that way because Canada and in Europe, they do change the litter with every cycle. We don't do that.
Yeah, it is a good one because, every time you go out and give a presentation somewhere and we talk about built-up litter, and like you said, most places don't use built-up litter. And so they're just shocked when you tell them, yeah, you're doing it all wrong. But one of the first classes that I took in Coccidia, or part of my defense, the question was, what is a new house effect with Coccidia? And that is exactly what it is. There's not any Coccidia to start with, and it pushes it so late into a cycle that it's really a bad thing. As far as the bacteria go, again, I think the rule of thumb is that if you can get it in, again, a stable environment, you can see the diversity is so much broader at the beginning and then it shrinks down. So if you can get that to shrink into a more of a mature bacterial population faster, it's better. So again, this built-up litter can do that.
Have we learned anything more about nutrition and what contribution, if any, it makes to maintaining a healthy gut so that we're less dependent on some of these medications?
Again, very good question on the diets and nutrition. Because I give a lot of these antibiotic talks, and one of the first things you'll talk about is diet. And we've shown that higher levels of certain enzymes, like superdosing of phytase, is actually shown to be change the pH of the intestinal tract and be beneficial at changing. It regulates calcium, but then you can move down into the minerals. And we've done a lot of vaccine with different levels of really absorbable zinc levels and gotten better villi strength and actually have shown really good improvement. So it's really a whole gamut of things, from diets to enzymes to minerals to probiotics to prebiotics to the phytoceuticals. And so it's and organic acids and butyric acid. So we've got a whole army of things. You think that maybe we can't do it, but we can do it if we use them all.